My friends, what the United States cyber intelligence monitors have picked up in Brazil's data traffic over the past 72 hours is not just a simple adjustment of electoral rules. They intercepted the source code for the end of the conservative opposition. Donald Trump's strategic office, operating directly from Mar-a-Lago, has just decoded the final gear of the Brazilian system, and the alert that sounded in Washington chills the blood of those who understand the true game of global power. Pay close attention, because the old mainstream media is working day and night to convince you that we are only debating mere superior electoral court bureaucracy. But the real war, the war that will decide whether Brazil will be a free nation or a satellite of dictatorships, is happening right now. On the dark servers that decide what will or will not appear on your phone screen. The Brazilian governmental machine, the same legal and media consortium that had to throw out legal precedent to overturn Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's conviction and put him directly back in the seat at the Planalto Palace, activated its extermination plan for the 2026 elections. And a very high-ranking official, the voice of Washington's diplomacy, the key figure in Trump's circle, came forward and pulled back the veil of diplomacy. She called Brazil's new electoral rule by the only word that defines it with military precision: censorship. And it's not just any censorship. They activated what I call, in our strategic intelligence analysis, the silent guillotine. Write that down. Silent guillotine. Now imagine that you're inside a situation room in Washington where analysts from the State Department are watching heat maps of the Brazilian internet melting in real time. They see huge right-wing profiles, which used to reach millions of people in seconds, suddenly disappear into the abyss of organic irrelevance. The silent guillotine doesn't physically imprison the politician. It cuts off his digital reach without spilling a single drop of blood, isolating the opposition in a vacuum where no one hears them. The rule is ruthless and diabolical. Giant social networks like X are barred by court order from using their recommendation algorithms in the For You tab to boost political profiles. The leftist system's master survival plan has been exposed, and Americans have already figured out the game. Brazil is shielding its establishment against the sovereign rule of its own party. And do you really think this is just an administrative rule? Do you believe in the comforting illusion that just because it's written in an official document, it's legitimate? This is exactly where you're mistaken. And it's in this naivety that republics die. The most lethal, violent, and cowardly censorship in the history of humanity is not the one done in the shadows. It's the one that's endorsed, stamped, and published in the official gazette. And if you open the history books, you'll see that during the darkest years of Brazil's military dictatorship, there were official laws to censor the press, newspapers, and television, all under the moralistic pretext of protecting the family, children, and good morals. And today, the rhetoric has changed. They put on tailored suits and use terms like defense of democracy and fighting misinformation. But the mechanics of oppression are strictly, meticulously the same. The narrative of the sold-out media tries to normalize the absurd, whispering in your ear that the court just made a little rule to make the electoral playing field fairer. That's a lie. What American intelligence has detected is clear. This is a surgical and premeditated attack to annihilate the organic engagement of leaders who do not depend on the system. We need to get down to the nuts and bolts of Brazilian politics so you can understand the brutal contrast. The conservative right doesn't dominate elections because it has the keys to the treasury or because it buys public opinion. The right wins through the grassroots support of the people. It's the WhatsApp ants, the uncles hanging out in the town squares, ordinary workers, and the young people who have already realized that the left in power means economic collapse, higher taxes, and the death of the future. The right mobilizes crowds organically. The left, on the other hand, is an artificial construct. It only survives in power if it has an iron grip on television, radio, the internet, and the stroke of Supreme Court judges' pens. And the architect of the system, knowing he lost the streets and social media in a humiliating way, had to turn to the courts to build this cyber wall. They are punishing those who have free popular support and rewarding those who need to pay to be heard. It's the criminalization of charisma and true connection with the voter. Now, for this report that we're bringing here to be seen by millions of Brazilians, I need you to sponsor this episode specifically. You can use the super thanks down below or the Pix details that appear on your screen. Understand this, the equation we're dealing with leaves no room for doubt about how to interpret it. It's pure war mathematics. When the Electoral Court bans the organic recommendation of political profiles, the practical, lethal, and immediate consequence is that a conservative candidate is turned into a digital ghost. I'll give you the exact impactful translation of all this. If the algorithm can't recommend politicians like Congressman Nicolás Ferreira, for example, who attracts legions with purely popular engagement, they lose the ability to reach voters outside their own bubble. They end up stuck speaking only to those who already follow them. The oxygen of politics is expansion, my friends. Without it, new leaders don't emerge. The renewal of Congress is frozen and the opposition's new blood is cut off. The silent guillotine silences you before you even open your mouth to a new viewer. But why are Trump's cabinet and the highest spheres of American politics spending energy monitoring the election algorithm in the Southern Hemisphere? Yeah, my friends, because in the chess game of international geopolitics, things are infinitely more complicated. Brazil is the anchor, the cornerstone of all of South America. If the less conservative voice is silenced by censorship, the far left doesn't just win an election, it consolidates the perpetual continental monopoly over the treasury, the land, and the institutions. For the United States military and diplomatic intelligence, a silenced Brazil is not a synthesis, it's a domestic curiosity. It's a Class A threat to Western national security. A country of 200 million inhabitants, dominated by a hegemonic left-wing system, without an opposition that can speak out and win, immediately becomes fertile, safe, and operational ground for international narco-terrorism. Do you get it now? The doors to the South Atlantic are thrown wide open to the predatory and hostile influence of the autocratic axis formed by Russia, China, and Iran. If the right is strangled by the app's code and can't win in a fair vote, Brazil will become a forward operating base for America's greatest enemies. Trump and his allies understand that what's at stake isn't likes, views, or TikTok dances. What's on the table is the survival of the West. Do you see the play? Subscribe, turn on notifications and like the video. It takes effort to bring this to you. But don't be romantic and keep both feet firmly on the ground. If you believe that algorithmic censorship is the final stage of the plan, brace yourself to go one level deeper in this civilizational war. The desperation of the ruling elite to keep the keys to the Planalto Palace at any cost made them cross all the red lines of international law and basic civic common sense. We are witnessing the tearing up of the Constitution live on national television for everyone to see. We saw Supreme Court justices overturning decisions made by their own vice presidents in less than 24 hours to ensure that the interests of the left are preserved intact. It's a dirty, shady game, and as allies of the system itself have already let slip publicly, they operate under the mantra, kill or be killed. But there is, however, an overwhelming factor that completely shifts the center of gravity in this dispute. The Brazilian system forgot that it's not operating in the dark. Every illegal move, every unconstitutional order forced at midnight, every abusive order sent to the headquarters of American tech platforms is being methodically recorded, catalogued, translated, and monitored by Uncle Sam. The illusion of absolute impunity that held back the judges in Brasilia stopped at the sovereign border of the United States. Donald Trump's Republican machine doesn't operate by sending little diplomatic protest notes. They operate through economic strangulation and laser-guided sanctions. The pressure has already started to leak through the cracks in the system. Damning dossiers are being compiled in the halls of the State Department, with the real and tactical possibility of internationally sanctioning justices of the Brazilian Supreme Court. Exactly as Washington has already considered doing to Alexandre de Moraes for his pattern of persecuting journalists and members of parliament. My friends, the message coming from the north is cold and direct. Whoever gets their hands dirty to steal the Brazilian people's freedom of expression will face international sanctions, exposed, and their global assets will be wiped out. And for you to feel the true weight of oppression, we need to dissect the financial monstrosity that operates behind this moral smokescreen. The court cut off the people's free voice, but left the floodgates for paid promotion wide open. And guess who holds control over the biggest coffers in the history of the Republic? The Workers' Party has already officially and in advance set aside an obscene mountain of about 127 million reais from the Public Election Fund, destined solely and exclusively for the presidential re-election campaign. 127 million taken from the taxpayer. This is close to the maximum limit, the ceiling set by the law. But the flood of money doesn't stop there. They allocated an absurd additional 264 million reais to flood the Chamber of Deputies, ensuring that the base of support is bought off, fed, and protected at all state and federal levels. Is this the true face of the democratic representation scam? By preventing your phone from recommending a right-wing candidate's video for free, the system demands that you pay a toll just to exist on the network. Organic engagement based on talent, actually on popular support, has been demonized and classified as income. Paid promotion, fueled by hundreds of millions of reais from public coffers, is blessed and authorized. While the opposition tries to swim with concrete blocks tied to their feet, the left will buy ad spots on YouTube videos, meta feeds and Google banners with your money. But it's imperative that we make a stark contrast with the recent past so you understand the extreme difficulty. What is coming? It's not as if the war is won. The difficulties are colossal. The vital difference between 2022 and 2026 is who's on the other side of the global chessboard. In 2022, Joe Biden's far-left government put the American state apparatus, the CIA, the FBI, and the Department of Defense in favor of censorship in Brazil. They sent diplomats to pressure Brazilian generals to hand over the keys to the country without questioning the integrity of the process. They shielded the status quo that put Lula in power. Now the diplomatic tide has turned with devastating force. With the unpredictable and hardline presence of Trump controlling the Oval Office, the Brazilian magistrate who once took X offline with an untouchable, arrogant smile now sleep in fear. Hey, brave guy with the pen, you know that the era of impunity sponsored by the American Democrats is over. Power has changed hands and the Brazilian censors are isolated on a boat that's starting to take on water. Now repeat with me in the comments the two key words that serve as the precise verdict of our elite analysis today. Right, censorship exposed. I repeat, censorship exposed. Because we are marching on the razor's edge. But we are not being led to the slaughter, quite the opposite. The system has launched its restrictive code. The left has stacked up its billions from the party fund. They activated the silent guillotine, hoping that you, in the comfort of your couch, wouldn't notice that your freedom of choice was being decapitated even before you got to the polls. But the perfect crime failed at the outset. It underestimated Western intelligence. The diplomatic and intelligence apparatus led by Trump has already detected, mapped, and exposed the architecture of algorithmic fraud. The diplomatic and intelligence apparatus led by Trump has already detected, mapped, and exposed the architecture of algorithmic fraud. The United States knows. And now you also know that Brazil is not some passing election. Our land is the last frontier, the largest and most critical frontier in the defense of freedom in the West. If Brazil falls definitively into totalitarianism disguised as democracy, the wall falls and the entire South American continent sinks into the darkness of absolute state control. We are in an election period, and that's why they might try to block our channel at any moment. So we are activating our backup channel. If this one goes down, we already have another one ready to continue the mission, and its name, pay attention, is Blind a Sua Mente. Yes, Blind a Sua Mente. You can use the QR code that's appearing on your screen right now. Point your phone at it and it will take you straight to the subscribe button. Make sure you stay connected with me, because what they tried to do in the dark basements of binary code was dragged into the sunlight for the whole world to see. The expose from Washington shattered the mainstream media narrative. The dirty game was exposed. And no matter how dark and hostile the scenario seems, no matter how much money they pour into the internet to manipulate people's minds and hide the true right-wing candidates, there is a variable that no algorithm, no supreme decree, and no trillion-dollar party fund can predict, tame, or extinguish: your relentless lucidity and the raw strength of popular resistance. Naivety demands a price that nations cannot afford to pay. Ignorance costs you your own freedom. Prepare your mind. Protection is strategic. That's why you should send this video to your friends, to your family members, so they can receive the antidote and pay attention to what's happening. The system has activated the silent guillotine to cut off your access to information. We will not back down and will fight on their territory. While they desperately try to blind you with official algorithmic censorship, we've already built our unbreakable escape route. That's exactly why we've activated our exclusive platform, operating in a completely shielded environment and totally free from censorship. Forget the networks monitored by the minute. From now on, you stop being a passive target and enter our intelligence bunker. Inside, you're not alone. There you join more than 3,000 analysts who find the truth here and delve into the map of what really happens in the shadows. Don't be held hostage. Point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen or access it through the link in the description and in the first pinned comment. Take charge of your own thinking. Guys, we've been talking here in the last videos, in the last few months, about hybrid warfare, which is the war that the United States is currently fighting against China, Russia, Iran, Islamic radicalism, against the cartels and the São Paulo Forum, the Latin American left. They have joined forces to destroy the West and destroy democratic systems. Are they perfect? No, they are not. But it's what we have, and it's what guarantees our freedom, our right to free enterprise, our right to family, our right to religion, our freedom. As flawed as it may be, it's still our freedom. And to prove to you how committed Trump is to telling this to the world, a fascinating series premiered on Paramount Plus. It's also on Amazon. This series portrays everything we've been talking about here for many months. Our recommendation for this series is on our channel, along with more series and movie tips. Find the link in the description, pinned comment, or card. In fact, the first tip is in the card that will appear on the screen now. Just click and stay in our ecosystem. Now subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and give the video a like because it takes a lot of work to make. And if you recognize that it's important for this episode to reach more Brazilians, you can sponsor this video directly. Click on the super thanks below or use the information that appears on your screen. Now, shield your mind. Yes, shield your mind. I'm Shimoy Oliveira. See you in the next video.